Um, Welcome everyone to the Militarized Police Equipment Ad Hoc. It is September 26th, approximately 6:06 p.m. We are on today for a couple of things. Let's see. I know Lieutenant Turner is out. We're waiting to hear who might be presenting on mobile command vehicles. We were going to talk a little bit of scheduling. Commissioner Jordan is running a little bit late with his work obligations. And we also wanted to talk, or I put on the stock of in the robot policy and the proposed modifications. Okay. We will adjust as need be. So first, let's talk a little bit about scheduling in the next 3 weeks going forward. Suppose the first thing on the agenda is figuring out whether or not we need to continue Wednesday meetings.
I think last time we said we wanted to check in on a policy and whether it would be ready. I'm sorry, I totally blanked on which policy it was though.
I have a pretty good, I remember that. I'm pretty sure it is breaching. No, not breaching. Yes, breaching, because it's the only one we don't have. Which I think Lieutenant Febble was working on.
Yeah, so we have the breaching policy is written. It's just under final review. It's the impact report, which is causing the delay in that we do have to inventory the associated equipment, which there's only a couple people that have expertise in that. We've reached out to them. The good news is that because we've actually never used explosive breaching and it doesn't fall under the Oakland OMC, we do have time. So we are steadily working on that.
Excellent. Do you know when the final review will be completed on the policy itself?
Hopefully this week.
Just checking in. I think breaching might be covered by the OMC.
It is, and the department has agreed that they, until it is done, will not be using the breaching starting October, sometime the first week of October. And I think that's what Lieutenant Febble was talking about, that it isn't used very often, therefore they won't be using it until the policy is done or submitted. Okay. Well, it sounds like there's no guarantee that it would be done prior to Wednesday. That's not a knock, that's just a realistic assessment of the situation. And I suppose the only other thing that we could work on are things from today plus LRAD. But I also don't see a reason to continue doing Wednesday meetings just to work on LRAD and finishing up whatever we have here. Thoughts?
I agree. I think at least for the LRAD, I think Jesse or Jennifer, you brought it up just to wait after the presentation, be more beneficial. So I don't think there's a need for Wednesdays unless what's the ultimate deadline again that we need to have the majority of stuff done? Maybe have a specific date or no?
We can be done Monday night. Sorry, let me be more specific. Monday, October 10th. Monday night, October 10th. Posting deadlines are 48 hours before for Brown Act purposes.
Well, if that's what we're saying, that gives us 2 more meetings, which would give us technically 4 hours.
Including tonight, which I think after Friday's demonstration, we'll have a really good idea about LRAD. I think talking about 2 policies per night is probably our cap, especially things that are require a little bit more in-depth speaking about.
It sounds like drop Wednesday, September 28th, but keep the Wednesday after, and we can cancel it on Monday if we don't need it.
That's a good idea.
That's what I was gonna propose as well.
Okay. Well, okay. I think the meeting's already set up, so we don't need to come on Wednesday. We'll cancel Wednesday. That sounds like a good idea. The 28th, we'll reevaluate on the 3rd. Okay. That sounds good. And then there was an email that went out about the LRAD demonstration at 10 a.m. on Friday, September 30th. That's going to be at the G parking lot at the Coliseum. Just let the, I guess it's security or whoever's at the front to know it's there for the demonstration. I'll see you all there unless something comes up for me at work. Anything else besides LRAD that we'll see on Friday?
Are you asking me, Jesse? Sorry.
Yeah, sorry, that's a question.
No, is there something else you want to say?
I know that you had mentioned potentially seeing some other things.
Would you like to bring out some of the robots? I can ask the operators.
How does the ad hoc feel about that?
I will not be able to attend on Friday. I feel personally pretty satisfied with the report from the Ontario department about LRAD use.
Does anybody think it will be worthwhile to see the robots in action?
I don't think it can hurt.
What I'll do is I'll reach out to a couple of the operators, see if we can drive them out there. Not drive out the truck, not drive the whole robot out there, but I'll see who's available. And then if anybody has questions, you can kind of just look at them. That fair? I have no problem with that.
Yeah.
Cool.
Let's do that. That sounds good. Thank you. Okay. Let's see who's here, who's not. I don't see
Jesse?
Lieutenant.
I had another question about other logistical items.
So, sounds good.
Is there any way that we can put some of the draft policies on like a shared drive that we can all have access to? I see you smiling. And then we could probably just enter some comments. I think that might help with remediating some of the comments or questions we might have offline.
I might put in a plug for putting them on the ad hoc website so the public would be able to view them as well.
So, there is a way that requires sharing the document through OneDrive that we have not done. I suppose we could also load them onto a Google Docs drive or Google Docs sheet and do it. At best, that question seems more directed towards being able to provide close to live feedback offline.
Correct.
And I don't have a good way of doing that. We could try it with a particular document if you'd like to.
Okay. Would it be too administratively burdensome for folks at the department that are drafting and editing to be able to do that on a live version? Maybe Lieutenant DQ. Is that easy for you or difficult?
I'll be honest with you
Yes.
guys. I don't know how to do it.
Okay.
I have a thought. Why don't we do this? I think the one where that may generate the most comments at the moment is probably LRAD. Lieutenant DQ, why don't you send me a Word document of your most recent draft on the LRAD policy? And I will see if I can figure out how to do that between now and Friday.
And we're saying putting it on a OneDrive, or what do you want to put it on?
Send me the document. I'm going to put the document on the Outlook OneDrive,
Okay.
which department has access to.
Got it.
I actually don't think our community members, well, I'm not sure if our community members will have access to it. I will figure that piece out.
Okay.
So that we can have a single shared document with comments. We'll see if it works or not. If it doesn't work for community, I will endeavor to incorporate the comment. I will enter the comments
Got it.
or figure out some way to do it.
Do you
Just
think
send
there,
me. Go ahead.
sorry, do you think there's any way to available on the ad hoc website?
It wouldn't be a live version then.
There used to be a way. There is a way. It's Conveo, and it's a way for the public to enter comments directly into a PDF version of the policy. I don't know if we're going to have that in the next 3 weeks. Let's keep this one internal for now while I figure out the Conveo one and see if I can get an answer by Wednesday. I know we're not meeting on Wednesday, but by Wednesday. Erickson?
Hello, everybody. I was just looking over my schedule and school schedule with with the schools I work with, and unfortunately, I won't be able to make it on Friday at 10 a.m. due to it being too hectic. I had a question for DQ. How long do you think it takes? Just in case if I could squeeze out of those meetings.
I think it depends on the questions.
Mm-hmm.
We're not gonna. I would assume maybe an hour, unless people have more questions, and then depending on the questions and how we want to test it, whether it's close up, far away, how many times we want to do it, and also just looking at it, picking it up. So maybe it could be a quick 30 minutes. It could be also 2 hours. And I don't really have a time sensitive schedule that day, so I'm pretty open. So I think it's just kind of up in the air.
Okay. Yeah, this school schedule just switched up. My apologies.
Okay.
Okay. Let's see. I don't see Lieutenant Fleming, and I don't see Lieutenant Turner, so we can't get started on mobile command. So let's talk about the let's talk about the robots and modifications.
Do you want to open it up on your end, Jesse, or do you want
I'm doing it. Yeah, I'm doing it. I got it. Thank you. So let me start off by saying that I have stayed up many nights thinking about robots, unfortunately. And thinking about it and the way the Oakland Municipal Code is written, I do think it makes sense to give City Council two proposals. And here's why. Let me start by sharing my screen. Okay, so the reason why I think that it makes sense to give two proposals is what we have here, which is this is the Oakland Municipal Code. It is 9.65. It's talking about the review and the recommendation process. That's up here, a little bit higher up, the Police Commission review. And if you go down, section G is what talks about the review process for the city council. The city council has, much like the police commission did, some limited options. The first one is that it just approves the policy. Excuse me. The first one is just that it approves the policy. And it is essentially, I think in this section right here, it talks about approving or rejecting the police commission's recommendation within 120 days. If they don't within 120 days, then the commission's decision becomes final. Now, if the police commission proposes that the controlled equipment use policy be rejected or modified, city council has to take a look at it and then make a determination within 120 days. It doesn't really say, but I think based on the way this is written, that the council either approves the policy, modifies the policy, or takes the police commission's recommendation of modification, or rejects the policy. And I don't know what city council is going to do, but I want to leave open the possibility that city council wants to prohibit all uses of force using robots, and also without them sending it back to us. And I want them to have that option, because if they do want to prohibit all uses of force by robots, and they don't have a policy in front of them that says so, they could just end up rejecting the proposed policy, period, and then no robots for anybody. That's my thinking about why we send two proposals, or send those two proposals, but make a recommendation as to which one that they should take on. Thoughts? Comments? Anyone feel differently about this process and what the city council can do? Jennifer?
I like this overall plan. And I especially like that it gives us an opportunity to explain to council how the ad hoc is, parts of the ad hoc might be looking at it in different ways, which I think will help them in thinking about how to approach the decision-making process. So overall, high level, I like this plan.
To that same point, there's going to be a memo that will go with it that will describe some of the issues involved and the different positions to be taken, and why I think we end up in a certain way or having a particular recommendation, so that they can track the reasoning and that they have the reasoning to either agree with, disagree with, or make their own decision. I just don't see anywhere in this code where it allows the city council to make the modifications themselves. And maybe they'll do it anyways, but in case they don't, I think the department wants, at the end of the day, a policy that is passed and approved so that they can use robots. Commissioner Jackson Castaigne, Angela?
Yes, so do you know if there's any likelihood that they, or even ability for them to say, hey, to provide us recommendations and then send it back to us for additional changes?
I don't.
Because
I
essentially
don't,
what,
short of them rejecting it.
okay. Okay. How has this been, does anyone know how it's been done in the past?
In the past, I don't think this situation has arisen. because in the past we have worked collaboratively with the department, and the department and the commission have been on the same page about policy. And because they've been on the same page, I think city council approves based on the recommendation of based on the collaboration, kind of like what Mrs. Sada Olubala was saying, how they just sort of, she described it as a rubber stamp or on the instant calendar.
Right. Okay, so we in essence would then be providing two versions of the same policy for their consideration.
Right. Because part of it is that the other reason about it, not just the legal mechanism reason, is that we are a small group, right? We are a small group. The police commission is a small group, and as much as we would like, it is not widely attended, let's say. And the issue of use of force and robots is one that I think is rightfully a subject of community concern and consideration. And so they may have a very different group or population. I don't know who's going to talk about it. I don't know if anyone cares about it, frankly. I'm sure people do, but it's something where they should have hearings or will probably have much broader public input. And if that public input goes a certain way, I want to make sure that the department at the end of the day, again, has a policy and can continue to use robots.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So I thought what I might do is take a look at the language of both the one where use of force is completely prohibited, and then the other one where it is useful in only limited circumstances, and pin down the language on those to finalize to be sent to council, sent back to the commission. So let me share my screen for that. I will start with prohibiting because it's relatively straightforward. Use of force, there it is.
Jesse, I'll just preface with I had some comments about this one.
Okay. So in both versions of the policy, I've made a few stylistic edits. The first one that I think is an edit with a choice is that I wanted to make sure that it was clear that robots were controlled by human individuals, and that's going to be useful or important for the the second version of the policy when ascribing who it is that will be the target officer for K3 use of force considerations and K4 reporting considerations. The other part of it is that I think a lot of fear comes from imagery of autonomous robots and autonomous robots with weapons or guns, ones which are not completely controlled by a human, and wanted to clearly pin down that this particular policy doesn't cover that, which means that the department under the current use ordinance and state law would need to get approval for those robots and would probably need to write a different policy for them whenever we get to that point. This section just does the same thing, but making sure that it's consistent all the way through. And then deployment authorization was except as otherwise provided otherwise in this policy. This is in both policies because the next section has lower rank and then the other policy has higher rank. this talked about uses of force on people and that they cause minor to serious injury. Since there was going to be a clear prohibition in this policy, it was just taken out. I changed paragraph 1 in prohibited use to make clear that it was two different things that were being described here. One is that shall not be equipped with any weapon systems. And the second thought is that not equipped with any analytical systems capable of identifying groups or individuals. And then 4 and 5 here are the prohibitions for the tools. I did not have a prohibition on OC canister. 4 simply says it won't be used on a person. And 5 is shall not be loaded with a live ammunition round. Those don't feel like they're different, but to me they were potentially different. And equally problematic in the sense that there could be situations where you want to use the pan disruptor not on a person with a live round, but has some danger, it being lethal force of some sort, even though it may not be used on a person. And I imagine that if they were going to go with this full no force option, council would likely have a problem with a live ammunition round as well. Jennifer?
Thanks. I like how you split out 4 and 5. One thing I was thinking about was if the intent that we want to convey is for robots to be not used to escalate or go to a lethal option, then we should probably make that explicit. So adding something in the prohibited uses along the lines of robots and or their attachments may not be used on a person, and possibly leaving it at that, but I'm sure we can come up with something better than that.
That language may be too broad considering the OC canister. Because that is specifically designed to be used against the person.
In that case, is there a way to add in the arm? Or to add in language about the arm shall not be used on a person or be used to. I'm looking for some way to express that that the authorized use for the robot and attachments does not include lethal force. Also, much appreciation to DQ for his patience while we're going hard in the opposite direction that he'd like us to go in.
Okay, so let me break out what you said. Let me see if I can break down a little bit what you said. I heard you say that you want to be clear that none of the attachments should be used in a way that might be considered a lethal use of force. I wonder if that leaves open the possibility that the claw would be used as a use of force in non-lethal situations, an intermediate or a lesser use of force. Are you leaving open that option?
I would rather not leave open that option, right? Like that just gives me the image of pushing someone off of a cliff. Obviously not something that anyone's planning on doing, but I would like to close that if possible. I just don't see a way to do it. I think it's there. I just can't figure it out right now.
DQ, in what ways has the robot been used, the claw attachment been used on a person? I'm talking about anecdotes right now, ways that it has been used previously. Not possibilities or speculation, how it has been used thus far.
No. It's only been used to deliver stuff. Move items. It's never been used on a person. I think the closest we've ever maybe have done something to use it on a person was pick up a firearm off a person, which we don't train on. So that was the biggest thing. I think the other thing that, that's just speculating what we can do it, but it's never been used on a person at all.
Do you see a situation where the claw, well, let me say it a different way. Does the department want to, what's the department's position on a line that prohibits the claw attachment from being used as a means, a use of force to overcome resistance? I'll say it that way.
Yeah, that's good. Well, I mean, situation, right? I would have preferred, or I would have liked the claw to be used on a person who's unconscious with a firearm on them to go up and quote unquote nudge them, tap them, try to wake them up. Whether it be somewhat a similar gesture of me coming up and trying to tap you on the shoulder or tap you on the leg to wake you up, as opposed to us having to come close to you. So if you were to call that overcoming any resistance, but if the person is unconscious, technically he's not resisting per se, or the woman is not resisting per se, because we believe, the person's unconscious. So I don't think that'd be considered overcoming resistance. But I would foresee or like it to be utilized in that way if we need to. That's an option. Hey, a person's unconscious and we can utilize the claw to nudge, tap. I don't know what other verbiage we want to use. But again, I don't see it grabbing someone's arm. I mean, maybe in a rescue operation or something, but even then our robots aren't, I don't think that's strong enough to grab someone's arm and pull them. I don't think so.
Can there be anything around lethality?
Around what, Jennifer said?
Around using the robot or its attachments for lethal force?
Yeah. I see what you're saying. This tends to prohibit any use against a person, which generally covers that situation. I know that you want to explicitly call it out, but I think that's the reasoning that you want to do it. I will think about how to do that. Any other thoughts on the prohibited use section for this one? gonna tell you right now, when I read this policy, I think it prohibits the situation where you strap a C4 to a robot. Or I think it does. Because it says not be equipped with any weapon systems.
Can you, I'm sorry, I'm missing that part. Can you point it out, please? Ah, thank you. Does that take out the OC canister use? Rachel Beck just pointed that out. I think she meant the title, but she might mean this too.
Oop.
And just to be clear, as a community member, I would be totally fine with that.
OC spray is force. Yes, I do need a title change. I will figure. I'll make a note of that as well. Thank you. All right.
I'm also wondering which section A, is that the same section or a different section?
Yep. Let me fix that. Any other thoughts, comments, or suggestions for prohibited use or other parts of this policy?
None from me.
None from me either.
I think I'm good too. Thanks for translating my thoughts into what the language needs to look like.
Thank you all. Let's take a look at the other one. All right. This is the modification proposing limitations on use of force. The operative section would be in prohibited use, which I now know I need to add in here. Meeting. Nope. That one. Jennifer.
I am wondering for the limiting force version, if we want to spell out the lethal options and whether that is permitted under limited circumstance or if it is prohibited.
Let me, I suppose, talk about first this sort of the parameters of what is here. At the moment, and I see Commissioner Jordan has joined us. Perfect timing.
Hi, everyone.
Just as a heads up, we were looking before this at there are two policies. The reasons why is to make sure that some version of the policy gets through council, whether it's complete prohibition on the use of force or it's with the limiters. We looked at the prohibited, the one that has completely banned the use of force on by a robot. And now we're on the one involving limiting modifications, limiting the use of force.
Okay.
So what I have here are three different paragraphs, or three different sections added to two different sections added to prohibited use and a further modification to the one that was approved by or voted on by commission. The first one is that the rotating robotic arm shall not be used to overcome any level of resistance, passive or active, mainly because it is not envisioned to be used as use of force or overcoming resistance, but as a de-escalation tool, delivering items or picking up items from people that the police want to separate them from, specifically weapons or firearms. I added this section number 5, which is a breakout or a little bit is the previous paragraph that was originally above, but a little bit more defined out or separated. So can't be used on a person except as provided below. Exigent circumstances, which there's a footnote to describe it. Wanted to clarify that it is a use of force and wanted to clarify that the human operator is the responsible officer for purposes of K3 use of force and K4 reporting and investigating the use of force, because there is only one remote operator. There may be other people who are involved, but one remote operator who's dealing with it. And then this is just again, just what we had up above, just broken out a little bit more and with more specificity. Number 6 is what was the 11th hour edit right after our Wednesday meeting. I've added in a couple of more modifiers, adjectives to describe the situation that we envision this particular situation and lethal force the robot being equipped with. The live round: catastrophic, high risk, high threat, mass casualty. And then the language from Commissioner Jordan: while expressly forbidden during standard usage, captain of police, commander may authorize it to be loaded with live ammo round to be used in such an extreme and unusual situation described above. Described in the paragraph above. This is a lethal use of force subject to the restrictions spelled out in K3, the requirements, de-escalation, and reasonable alternatives. And then I added again who is the responsible officer and a notification requirement because of the very unique circumstances that it may be seen in. I imagine that there would be, assuming someone does get it's fired, that's a lethal use of force that has some very specific call outs and very specific reporting requirements and notification requirements, kind of like an officer involved shooting. And so I tried, there's already a long list for level 1 investigations. So I just tried to limit it to those who may not be in that set, meaning CPRA, OIG, and the police commission. DQ?
I was kind of curious, just that you brought this up is actually good for that section 3. So basically, if another officer tells another officer to use force, only the sole officer who uses force is responsible for that use of force for our policy. Whenever a supervisor now directs you to use force upon a person, that supervisor is also responsible for that use of force. So are we saying that, I know we're saying a captain above is only given the directive of loading, but not telling you when to use force? Is that kind of, sorry, not to make this more complicated, but our policy does say that if you're a supervisor and above, and I say, hey, Jesse, I want you to use force on Jennifer, I'm responsible for that use of force too. I became a subject in that use of force too. So not only are you responsible and you fall under that level 4, level 3, whatever specific line it is, but me as a sergeant or lieutenant or captain, because I directed you to use that force, I fall under that use of force too, just FYI. Does that make sense? So I wasn't sure if that's, if we're just authorizing so if I'm authorizing though, the usage though of a round, but not telling you to use it, it's a little different. So I'm trying to figure out if we make the captain responsible for that use of force too. Specifically because this is pretty extreme. Any thoughts? Kind of a little bit.
That was not my intention of doing that. David, do you have something?
So my thought was sort of kind of connected to this. In the reporting, I think it should be made clear that there should be reporting whether a live round is actually utilized, like actually fired. If a live round is loaded into the pan disruptor for some reason, under any circumstances, that should be a thing there is notification around. Whether it ends up being used as lethal force or not. I think that should be made clear. And so in that situation, the captain who sort of authorizes that usage is responsible for the loading for sure. I don't know. I guess if you have, and to DQ's question around, is the captain or higher who authorizes the usage, the actual loading of the round, are they responsible for the use of force in that circumstance? It is we are getting into the territory of semantics in some ways. But and again, like between the time of authorizing use of force and actually it being used, you could imagine that could be a relatively long period. If you're in some sort of like barricaded standoff situation, then it ceases to be sort of a shoot that person's immediately shot. It is a you can use this thing to resolve this situation. I don't know. I'm also a little on the fence about where responsibility lies. It feels like under a circumstance like this that it sort of lies with both, but because it is so unusual.
DQ?
Yeah, I was going to go maybe the way David explains, right? If these incidents take for so long, so if I think we leave it as the way it is, and if it's very clear, if this, let's just say we go with this policy, this use policy, and it's very clear that that the commander or the captain said, hey, Jesse, I want you to use force right now on this person, then you both are obviously responsible. If the captain now says, hey, I'm authorizing this, but obviously if X, Y, and Z happens, and then you make the decision to use force, then it's only on that officer. So I think it'd be case by case, and we already have our use of force policy on K3 and K4 reporting. That's pretty self-explanatory. And if we're explaining it here for the purposes of we're writing K3, K4 here, I think we're fine.
Jennifer?
I got a little bit lost with this, and I'm really glad that DQ brought it up. I'm wondering if section B is having the captain authorize loading, and then the authorization to actually fire is coming from the operator, or if it's coming from the captain, or from both.
So you all bring up some very good points. I think that it makes sense to what I wanted in section C was to make sure that there was a officer who was responsible for the use of force if fired. Not about the loading, but wanted to make sure that, you know, I know that it's probably silly to spell out, but to make sure that if a round is fired, that the person who's in control with that remote, who pressed the button to fire the pan disruptor, that's the person who is the officer that you would normally look at who's using force. That's all I wanted in that section. And so I drafted section D just now to try to clarify that. I'll probably get rid of C, so that it's clear that the firing or the human operator is the one holding the remote control, is the one that is the person using force. Y'all bring up a separate issue, which is really a good thing to look at, which is the review of the loading and who is responsible for that. I heard that we're talking about the captain as the person who is sort of making that decision and making that authorization, as the person who's scrutinized for that decision. Am I hearing correctly?
That makes sense to me.
I'm still not clear on whether the intent is for the captain to be scrutinized for the firing, or if it's for both the firing and the loading, or just the loading. I don't
think
on it. I just don't understand it.
that's fair. So correct me if I'm wrong, DQ, but in a situation where something is fired, a gun is fired, not only is the person shooting the gun looked at for use of force review, but also any person who may have authorized it or any person who may have ordered them to shoot. Is that right?
Yeah, so a lot of different scenarios. So if let's just go with the beanbag route, okay? And let's go with an officer tells another officer, shoot that person with a beanbag round. The only person who's the subject considered in the use of force, we're considered subjects because I fired the round in the use of force, is the officer. That is it. So the officer is the only one who made the conscious decision to fire his weapon. He, for he or she, whatever reason, fired the weapon. So he's the one that's under the use of force investigation. Does that make sense, Jen? Okay, so now let's say I'm the sergeant and I tell Jesse, who's an officer, Jesse, I want you to shoot the shotgun round at that person because I'm telling you to shoot it. If I'm directing a use of force upon another person, you as the person who's firing the firearm or the shotgun, beanbag, whatever it is, and the supervisor directing the use of force are both subjects in the use of force. Okay. However, if I tell you and I authorize you, hey, yes, you can use a K9 in this deployment, I'm not the officer. As a supervisor, I'm not the person who gets the use of force as a subject. It's only the K9 handler. But if I tell the K9 handler, I want you to release the dog right now, then I become the subject too. So if I direct you to do it specifically and take the actual action to use force, then you become the use of force person too. Does that make sense? Only as a supervisor and above, not as an officer. Am I, Jeff, does that sound about right?
Yes.
Okay.
I think in any use of force situation, especially lethal, internal affairs and homicide, they're going to figure it out. So, and they're going to interview everybody, even the captain,
Correct.
and the person that pulls the trigger there.
So when it comes down to an officer involved shooting, as far as investigation for the sergeants on scene, the watch commander, tactical incident commander, everyone's going to be questioned, and the main questions for them are going to be, what was your game plan? What was the plan? What were your contingencies? Who was in charge? Who was the incident commander? Were you delegating? What was everybody's mission? What was the objective? What was the end state? So that's the questions that the incident commander or watch commander is being asked.
Thank you for that. David?
Yeah, so I think that in some situations, it may be that if the captain who is contacted to authorize the use of a live round in a pan disruptor may not necessarily be the person who, in the moment, has the sort of final authority. That might be the incident commander, who may not be a captain, potentially. You would think if it was something as catastrophic as this, you would have a captain on site. But we can't sort of predict every scenario. I also, I guess, was thinking of this in terms of sort of like, I don't know, like a sniper, right? A sniper is going to sort of have a shot and be sort of be like, they're going to be set up on a target before they take the shot. It's not like it's going to be a snapshot just sort of as soon as they get in position. Presumably they're asking for authorization to take the shot when necessary, or I assume at times they're also using their own judgment, that if there's something that qualifies as a lethal use of force, then they are authorized to use their own judgment, presumably. But I imagine that under most circumstances, they have to be given sort of final authorization to actually, fire. And in that situation, whatever sort of supervisor is giving them that authorization would be sort of a part of that use of force. I imagine this would be something very similar, used only that it is something that's going to be used in a very deliberate fashion and not in sort of a split second sort of fashion, if used at all. That, I guess that's why I'm seeing it. So, but that in fact might not be the captain who initially authorized the usage, potentially, right? Captain or higher. So those might be two separate individuals, two separate supervisors who are one authorizing the usage, one authorizing the actual firing. And then the person who is controlling the robot who is doing the firing. Also, I do imagine that's, regardless of how detailed we get here, when this is looked at under sort of, force review board and all that stuff, they're going to have to sort of parse this out under, what was the best sort of judgment and like reasonable action under policy. In the moment, I suspect we're not going to be able to get the exact scenario right from our end, because Honestly, I hope it's not, it's never a thing that we have to think about, to be honest with you. I did have a technical question. I had two separate things here. Um, um, up on the piece around the robot arm, I know I'm sort of jumping away from the thing that we were talking about. If we could add like used bodily upon, or used bodily to overcome, just so that because like the way it's written here, like a barricaded door could be perceived as resistance potentially. And I think it's, we should be clear that it is specifically not meant to not be used like bodily upon a human being. That's my perspective. Last thing, and I don't know who potentially has the tech info on this, maybe DQ, maybe nobody. Do you know if the blank round that is used in the Pan Disruptor in its sort of standard form, is that the same loading as a standard sort of like whatever you guys are using? Presumably you're using like double aught or something in your like standard shotgun. And my question is like, would the Pan Disruptor, is a lower pressure round for that, or is it a sort of the same standard kind of loading?
Yeah, that's a great question. Right now, we've only used blanks. We've never used a live round, so I don't even know. I would assume it's the same standard shotgun round, but I wouldn't even know.
Because it could be you put a live round in there, and the chamber that it would just destroy the actual Pan Disruptor because it's too overpressured potentially. Hopefully we'll never know. Just curious if you knew if those were equal or not.
I tried to address the part about grabbing a person. And I changed it to say shall not be used on a person by grabbing the person or their clothing. Is there any other situation? Or
Maybe
do you think that covers it?
by contacting the person or their clothing, so you can't push either.
Lieutenant Thomas?
So by grabbing people, so let's say there's a rescue situation, and maybe it got brought up, like we can't go pull somebody out like of a burning house or car by the robot.
No, this is specifically to overcome resistance.
Okay.
I could put in, if I put in as defined in DGO K3, because if you're pulling someone out of a car or a burning building, that's not a use of force, right?
Well, I mean, it depends if, it's
A
just
K3 use of
overcoming.
force. Yeah, a K3 use of force.
No, it's not a K3. It's just a regular. It could be a use of force.
Sorry, what was that, DQ?
I consider more of a rescue operation now.
I guess as long as it says as a use of force, then we should be fine.
Yeah. Jennifer?
I've got a couple of questions and suggestions, so if anyone else has any, jump in and I'll defer. The first one was there's that section where we're authorizing the captain or above. I was thinking in that situation, it might be worth explaining to the reader why that designation is there. Like, why is there a higher level than lieutenant here? Like, why is that actually necessary? And so explaining a little bit of the reasoning that went into that might be supportive in that section.
someone remind me how many captains there are?
I think we're authorized 10. And I believe we're authorized 27 lieutenants. And then 100
Yes.
sergeants, I believe, right? Something like that.
Yeah, like 124, I think it is right now. Keeps on changing year to year.
And watch commanders are typically lieutenants.
Yes,
Yes.
there are 12. Yes, total of 12.
I will work on that section. Next.
All right, and then I wanted to check in on the section about using the pan disruptor for exigent circumstances. I wanted to check in on if exigency is the situation that that's desired here. Because I see that it includes destruction of relevant evidence or escape of a suspect. And I'm wondering, are those is that the intent of using the pan disruptor with a blank or the tire slasher on a person for destruction of evidence or escape of a suspect?
That is a good question. Let me first turn to the department for that question.
Well, I don't think we'd be using the tire slasher on a person. But if we are trying to prevent escape and we need to slash the tires to prevent escape of a vehicle, I think that's fair enough. I think also if we need to use the pan disruptor to bypass a lock or a locked door or a fortified door, I think that'd be another example.
DQ, this section's about using it on people.
Oh, use it on people? No. Yeah, I wouldn't see how we'd be using the tire puncture or the window glass puncture on a person. On exigency and disruptor, I think that would fall more in line with the usage of the not to think about it. As far as are you asking whether or not it would fall in line as the same as loading it with a real round?
No, no.
Go ahead.
No, what I'm wondering is one of the reasons that you could shoot someone with this blank and water that's usually used on doors, but using it on a person instead. Some of the reasons include destruction of evidence or the escape of a suspect. And I'm wondering if that's the intent for the department to have that option in those situations.
I'm using it on a person?
Right.
I don't see, I mean, unless you see another reason, Jeff?
No. And our use of force policy is still in effect. So even though I know what the definition of exigency is, but there's our use of force policy is a little bit more restrictive.
So I think the reason why this question is being asked is because the previous iteration of this policy and what it says here says that it shall not be used on a person except as provided below, and that main circumstance is exigent circumstances. And exigent circumstances has a very clear definition, which is here, 3 things, and that's from other OPD policy, that necessary to prevent physical harm, the destruction of relevant evidence, or the escape of a suspect. And this was what was in the original policy, right? And so I guess in clearly defining the situations where such a tool may be used on a person, the question is relevant evidence or escape of a person. Really what you're going for or not?
No.
Sounds like no.
Yeah.
Okay. So would it be all right to change this from exigent or modify it? Would it make sense to modify it to say exigent circumstances specifically in the situations of preventing physical harm to an individual?
I think that's better.
And then for that particular piece, what level of potential harm?
Life or great bodily, serious bodily injury.
Serious or great?
Yeah.
Okay. Jennifer, does that get to your thoughts on this section?
It does. I've got one final thought to share.
1 second.
Yeah, take your time.
Destruction of allowed evidence, loss, escape. Unlimited. Okay.
All right, so the last piece I'm hoping we'll take a look at is the situation when the robot is used to deliver a bomb or other lethal device with the intent to harm the recipient. And I am wondering if that could be more explicitly described in this policy. Obviously, I would advocate for a prohibition, but since this is the limited use of force policy, I wonder if the department wants to weigh in on that instead.
So explain that one more time, Jennifer, for suspicious packages.
No, not for suspicious packages, but if the department wished to use the robot to deliver a lethal payload that would, with the intent of that payload, harming or killing the recipient.
Oh,
How
what's our
should-
take on, what would our take be on that?
Yeah, if you'd like.
Well, I think it'd be probably along the lines of loading it with a live round, which is very far-fetched and once and hopefully never. One, we don't deal with any type of C4 or any type of explosives. It'd be more of the Alameda County Sheriff's Department, although I don't even know if they have that. I'm assuming they do. I don't know. I know they have their own robots. So I think it'd be more of an outside agency assist at that point where I need to request somebody to come in and strap a bomb to my robot to deliver it. Obviously, has it happened before? Yes. Do we see the need of ever it happening? No. Highly unlikely, but possible, yeah. If it's something we want to include here, I'd be game for it. I think Jeff would agree. I don't want to opt out of a situation where we have the same incident where you have a shooter who's in an elevated position and shooting down at officers, and the officers can't get to the person, nor can a sniper get to the person. The only way of, unfortunately, overcoming this threat is attaching a bomb to our robot. And yeah, I mean, obviously, I would see that happening. I never thought of it, but
So let me start by asking a few questions on that point. One, does the department have explosives?
no.
Explosives, I think, are also covered by the ordinance. So in order to use explosives, the department's explosives, you would need to submit a use policy and impact report. Right, okay. Before I get too deep into it, David?
Yeah, I guess I was just wondering if the sheriff's department has explosives. I mean, clearly the Dallas PD had explosives. What are those breaching explosives? Is that what was that, or that was just somebody's personal supply of C4? Because that seems like that seems questionable. Like, and OPD does not use explosive breaching tools, right? It's things like the pan disruptor potentially, but mostly like the ram or the I'm making the motion of like a lever, but you can't see that. like the pry bar with the hook thing on it, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, we have the
Um,
metal. Yeah,
So
Here, let me cut in a
Yeah.
little bit. Yeah, we do have explosive breaching in
You
our
do.
inventory. We've never used it. We are writing a policy to see if we can use it. So it'll be coming in front of this ad hoc hopefully soon.
Okay.
But we do have explosive breaching.
And what, just out of, since we're having this conversation, what does that, what do those explosives look like? Not physically, what do they look like, but like, what are their sort of specifications?
I don't know. I
Mm.
don't know.
Okay.
That information is going to come as a part of the impact report in our inventory with Sergeant Cardona, which we're working on now.
Okay. I guess that I'll probably be seeing that eventually. Something to look forward to. But yeah, I guess because this conversation around the explosive was the thing that kind of began the entire conversation around making the robot a lethal tool, we should probably address that. No. In that situation, I am also sort of leaning towards prohibition. But since as Jennifer said, this is the version that is covering those potentialities, man. Honestly, I'm just finding the whole thing a little bit mind-bending, trying to come up with verbiage for something that is just such a something that I think we're just all like, I just hope this is not a thing we ever have to see. Okay, I don't have anything further. I'm still thinking about this. Sorry.
Jennifer?
Yeah, if the department is open to having in this version of the policy something that restricts lethal options, then that would certainly be something I would support. One thing that I want to check in on just to make sure that I have this straight in my head. I'm thinking about the circumstances procedure policy-wise that would allow being able to move forward. For AB 481, any explosives have to be, they have to be covered. So that actually, sorry, that's for the local ordinance. So I think that means that if the department has explosives, or if an individual has explosives, that those explosives wouldn't be able to be used in a bomb delivery situation. And jump in if that's incorrect. Okay. However, K7 says that military equipment used by other jurisdictions that are providing mutual aid to the department or otherwise conducting law enforcement activities in this jurisdiction shall comply with their respective military equipment use policies in performing such actions. And so that means my read on that, and so definitely jump in if I've got this wrong, is that there's nothing stopping OPD from asking Alameda County to use their robot and their explosives to deliver a lethal payload.
There is nothing that stops them. There would be the same, because it is OPD's action of asking and then ordering. There would be the same, I think it's still fall under K3 and lethal force. Because they would be specifically asking an outside agency to come in with a robot strapped with C4 to go eliminate somebody. They might be able to get away with a situation where they're just asking them to bring in the robot and use whatever means necessary, which is a little bit broader. Jennifer?
Could I ask in the other version that's more focused around not using the robots in lethal or harmful ways to have something added about not being allowed to coordinate with outside agencies to accomplish any of the explicitly prohibited items?
Let's see. I'll make a note about that. I have to think about how that works out, but let me think about that. Okay.
And back in the other policy, the one about limiting force, I still want to encourage us to go ahead and address that within the policy explicitly of what the intent is in that circumstance.
Which circumstance? Sorry, there were I wrote down a few.
The general use of delivering explosives or other lethal payload using the robot.
Whose robots, whose explosives?
Oh, I see what you're saying.
So I don't think the other thing, I don't think this policy. This policy does not cover a situation where the department asks the sheriff's office for their C4 to attach to the robots. But at the same time, they are not authorized to use explosives, regardless of how they get them. So I don't think that that is as much of an issue at the moment. Because explosives are covered by the local ordinance. And so OPD taking equipment and then using it would be prohibited, I think.
I agree that that circumstance isn't possible now with the policies that the department is presenting. My concern is later down the line, the department decides they want some new breaching equipment. And so that comes up in the course of the breaching policy. And then separate from that, people who haven't been part of this discussion, who might not be aware of what the intent of this ad hoc is, find themselves in a situation in which they say, well, we've got the C4, we've got the robot, let's use it. And so that's the situation I want to prevent, is a future situation in which people get creative and they have a different set of items available to them than they have right now.
I think part of that may be covered by this first sentence here, depending on the breaching tools. But I think it also, that is a good point. And I think we need to see exactly what explosive breaching brings us. So we won't be done with this tonight. Okay. Any other thoughts, comments, or suggestions on this policy limiting force? Going once. Going twice. Okay. Here's a thought. Why don't we go over mobile command in the 30 minutes that we have left, and maybe I will send notes to Lieutenant Fleming and Lieutenant Turner so that they can, with those suggestions, so that we take the use of the time that we have since we canceled Wednesday. Does anyone have the policy? Or should I pull it up? I'm happy to.
Yeah, if you can pull it up, Jesse.
I don't know why it looks like this. Give me a sec. There we go. Okay. Has everyone had a chance to take a look at this policy? Has anyone? Okay. I'm just going to go through it rather slowly because I don't know it as well. Any department members want to jump in, that would be great to talk about it. I was able to take a look or search to see what these vehicles look like. They look like mobile homes, and they are painted white, not the black colors. There are two, one older, one newer, and very interesting. Can someone from the department tell us when they're used generally, or give us a little description about what you're using them for?
Yeah, I can. So we've been using them. We'll use them on special events to place them out at the Coliseum, especially if we have communications out there or a dispatcher that can be in the vehicle, and also a spot for officers to go, like a central location. So, and then we've also been using them. So if there's a major incident that happens in the city, we'll have it placed out there for like a central location meeting spot. Or also if there's any like spikes in crime, we've been using them out in the street as a deterrent. We've been placing them out there in high crime areas just so people see that the police are in the area.
Can you said special events? What types of special events? And we also see community events. What are those that you envision seeing?
Special events, we use them for like baseball games, like especially if it's in the playoffs, or if there's like a big concert that's at the Coliseum, not at the local arena, like let's say they sells out the Coliseum like U2 or some other big names, we'll probably place it out there.
Okay. Jennifer?
Sorry, this is going to be a stupid question. Why does the mobile command center get used for special events?
It's so that we can place like dispatchers out there or have a spot for officers to go write reports or commanders to meet. It's kind of like a little central location.
So it's kind of like having a little remote office a little bit closer?
Correct, yes.
Do these get used for crowd or protests or crowd control? Not specifically to manage the crowd, but in those incidents?
Not that I know of, not my 25 years here, no.
Yeah, I agree with Jeff on that. It'd be more of a, I think in a situation like that, we'd be more scared of the vehicle being vandalized. Us not trying to get to the command post to move it in a sense. When you really think of a crowd control situation, it's always evolving, it's constantly moving. Our centralized locations would either be the EOC or the PAB or the Eastmont. So kind of like what you described, Jennifer, as being a hub or more like a satellite station. But we're using it more as a satellite station in the field for the command for like a special event. So that is our little satellite police station per se. So you wouldn't be utilizing it ever in a crowd control situation. And I agree with Jeff. I don't think I've ever seen it out there in a crowd control situation.
Yeah, they cost way too much for us to get them damaged, and they'd be a big target.
And summer 2020, that was the EOC. That was. Can you expand EOC? And the EOC is not covered by this.
No, the EOC is at the firehouse at the 16th MLK. That's like the main emergency office center, and that's a building, and that's not covered.
Erickson?
Sorry, I was chilling. In this vehicle, is there surveillance being taken? I know that a lot of times when there's a high crime rate or some incident happen, like the incident with Lily Sue, it was deployed around that area. So is there any surveillance being done when mobilized?
To my knowledge, there's no cameras. There might be a backup camera in there. There might be a camera in the big one, the one that has a Class B license, but to my knowledge, there's no recording devices. It's not used for trying to gather intel on people or surveillance or conducting investigations.
And are there monitors inside the vehicle, or is it? And specifically, what are those used, if there's any?
Yeah, there are some TV monitors in there, and most of it, I think it's for that one camera. So we can like face the camera out at, let's say we're at the Coliseum, we can face at the Coliseum or at the parking lot. It's a live view, it's not recorded. And then there are TV cameras in there. So let's say because we used to use it a lot for the football games, like the Raider games. We can have the Raider games on so we can see what the score is or see how much time's left in the game if you're not inside.
Thank you.
Now you're making it sound like a tailgate party.
I don't watch any sports, so no. I wouldn't know if it's an inning or a quarter.
I would probably, it's more like camping, not a tailgate party.
I guess along the same lines is the questions about surveillance. Is it ever used as a place where people can
No.
use other surveillance devices? Does that make sense? Like-
I kind of know what you're going with, and no, not that, to my knowledge, it's never been used for that. Maybe we should start since you just brought it up.
Yeah, I mean, it sticks out like a sore thumb. I mean, I think that's the purpose of it. It's for everyone to know it's police related, if that makes sense. Because I can tell you every time that it's deployed, you're probably going to have some type of emergency light on to show that it's police. So I don't, not really to conduct surveillance at all. Now, if someone's sitting in the front passenger seat and they're just looking out the window, we can say that, yeah, you are conducting live surveillance, just as a police officer, you happen to see something, then absolutely. But as far as having a Zoom cameras and everything, no, it's it sticks out like a sore thumb. It's for everybody to know it's a police vehicle, and to hopefully either deter crime or just have a satellite office.
Jennifer?
How do you know when to deploy it? Because it sounds like sometimes you deploy it to just physically exist as I am police, I am here. And sometimes there are situations when you don't want that, like in protest situations. And so I'm wondering what factors lead to making the decision to deploy or to not deploy?
I think it's always a commander's decision, especially like if it's a special event or something as we're planning, it's a pre-planned event. And then it's something you're like, okay, do we want the command post out there? Yes. And here's where we're going to put it. If it's more like a high crime area where we're trying to deter crime, it's usually the captain of the area that's requesting the use of the community resource vehicle, and they will dictate where they want to place that.
That makes sense about the who making that decision. I'm wondering how does that captain or whoever it is make that decision of, oh, this ball game we should have it, or this ball game we don't need it, or crime is up in this area, we should or we shouldn't use it. That's what I'm curious about.
I think it's on the special events, I think it's a game time decision. It depends on how big the event is. Obviously, if it's a smaller event, let's say like the A's games right now, they're very small events where you only get 3,000 to 5,000 people, fans that are attending the games. We're not going to deploy the resource vehicle out there. And it's also dependent on how many cops that we have that are attending the special events. Now, on the high crime areas, if we see a spike in crime in, let's say, Area 1, for example, maybe in a certain location, if it's been a couple of shootings in that location, then that's when we deploy it. Usually, unless it's I haven't seen deployed on one-offs, like if it's just one shooting that took place. But if it was a pretty significant shooting that's in the media, it's on our radar, it's in the, in our eye, then we're going to probably put it out there.
If there's already been a shooting, what's the intent of putting it out there? Right, because the shooting's already happened, so that's where I'm confused.
Yeah, it's to make sure that we don't have any retaliation shootings that will take place. Sometimes in Oakland that we will have one shooting at one location, and then sometimes there'll be retaliation shootings that take place like a couple days later. And also we want the citizens to know that we're out there. Obviously a tragic incident took place in their community, and we want them to see that police vehicle out there to make them, a little bit more comfortable.
Does it ever get parked and then left, or is it always staffed when it's parked someplace?
We like to park it and staff it just because it's such a big piece of equipment. It has a generator in it, has lights and computers. We always like to staff our equipment.
This is really helpful background. Thank you.
So
In this command post, would this be used as a place to hold people, or just simply for officers' use?
From my experience, it's always been for officers' use.
All right.
Or community members going in.
David, you were about to say something.
yeah, but then I was listening to Erickson's question and sort of thinking about the ramifications of that. I guess maybe for both Erickson and Jennifer, like, and all of us, what aspects of this do we see there being potentially problematic or misuse? are we concerned about? Clearly, we're concerned about sort of surveillance. And it is, I think, the sort of being out in the community as a sort of show of the presence of the police cuts both ways, right? It's a sort of two sides of the same coin there. For those who want to feel safe, it potentially makes people feel safe. There are those for whom the police presence makes them feel unsafe, whether they're committing crimes or not. So I guess that is problematic. And if you live on a corner where somebody's been shot, more than one person's been shot, you potentially already feel traumatized. I mean, let's just say, like, the people, there are people, I mean, it can feel in specific communities, especially where folks are shooting each other consistently, it can feel like the police are kind of occupying your neighborhood. And this is, it sounds like a prime usage of the mobile command vehicle. And how do we address that? Can we address that in policy? I don't know, but that feels to me like it's my prime concern with it. Honestly, when we were writing the ordinance, I had questions about whether this should be included as militarized equipment at all, because it seems beyond the point that I just suggested. If it is not being used for surveillance, it feels largely innocuous, but clearly there's some space for misuse. What do we think?
E, do you want to go first, or you want me to?
You can go ahead.
All right. Yeah, these are really good questions from Commissioner Jordan. I agree that sometimes not everyone in a neighborhood might feel the same way about police presence. And it could be anyone and for any reason. And so some people might find it comforting, and some people might find it very stressful to have the feeling of over policing. And I will defer to Erickson on any community input on that aspect. One other piece that I think we've started to dig in a little bit on is the fiscal responsibility part. It sounds like a lot of personnel get deployed when this is deployed, and it's both it's both a causal and not causal relationship, right? Like it gets deployed when many officers are deployed, and it does add to it, but it doesn't always lead to more officers deployed, possibly. It sounds like this is this fiscal consideration is something the department is already thinking about. And so I think it would be really helpful to have that shown in the impact report, or possibly in the policy itself, about what factors the department is thinking about, so that way the department's fiscal prudence can really be shown in this situation.
I also had another question, sort of in thinking about this. When it's sort of, I know that, like, the idea of like hotspot policing is sort of kind of not a thing that's happening so much these days. A lot of police forces are moving away from that. When it is put in an area where there's been a number of when there's been violence, whether it's a neighborhood or a specific intersection, say, are you seeing a reduction in violent crime? Is it just pushing it, you know, a few blocks over. Does it, I guess, I don't know if you have data on this, but do you have sort of anecdotal, if you do not have data, do you have anecdotal sort of information around that being an effective strategy?
Yes, we've seen it be an effective strategy. We've been using this strategy probably for the last probably 2 years, year and a half that I can think of, that we've been placing these out in, you know, high crime areas where we've seen a spike in violence, like over the weekend or something. And yeah, shootings go down, crime goes down around that command post.
What's the input you get from community about the posts?
I've never heard any negative comments about the command post being out there. I'm sure there are, but they just, I haven't heard any. DQ, have you heard any?
East 15, high prostitution area. The community loves it out there. Keep it real.
Sure.
They truly, truly love it out there. I think to Jeff Thomas's comment, David's question, yeah, I mean, you get displacement, obviously, right? Anytime you're going to go and be somewhere and have presence, whether it's presence, enforcement, education, whatever, yeah, you're going to get displacement, but it helps a lot if you have active shootings that are currently happening there. But it has stopped a lot of the violence in certain areas. But unfortunately, you know, we go somewhere else, then it goes back to that area. So we have the limited resources, and this is just an extra resource to help us hopefully combat or curb the violence per se.
And why would you use this as opposed to just
A patrol car?
exactly?
Good question. I think it is the sheer volume of the car, the high visibility, the fact of usually what you have, I think Jeff kind of noted to this, is we don't want these getting vandalized, so you always have somebody in here, and sometimes you have maybe a patrol car nearby. So you usually have a patrol car and this nearby. But imagine just sitting in a patrol car for 12 hours, right? As opposed to this, it's just a little bit, let's just be honest, it's a little bit more comfortable, right? And the fact of it's kind of one of those, one of these little satellite stations now that we've created in the field where you will get officers actually driving by and then stopping by. And now you have 3 patrol cars. Hey, how's it going, Jeff? Do you need anything? You want me to bring you a cup of coffee? Yeah, please, can you bring me a cup of coffee? Or hey, can you man this just while I use the restroom real quick? And then you do get more frequent police officers coming by, and I've never heard anything negative. I know we keep track on the militarization deployments, so we're keeping track of this. I've never heard anything negative. I think why would you put one of this? The sheer comfort level for more of an officer. To be honest, right?
Angela?
Yes, is this one on Oakland's website? It's not labeled as Oakland PD on it.
The one I have up is from the manufacturer's website. I think it was before they put the decals on.
Okay, so I was just making sure that there were decals, because otherwise I think the interpretation of presence could vary. You know, like if it's not marked, to me it could look like, I don't know, a news van or something and something else. So okay, if it's marked, then my point is moot.
That's actually a good question, though. What markings are on the car?
I believe it does say Oakland Police, and there's the shields or the patch are on there, but it's not like overmarked. It's not black and white. It's just, you know, the Oakland Police Department writing on it, and then maybe a patch or two. But
Great.
How long does a typical deployment last?
Usually they last, just depending on how, and we're just talking about specific on crime areas and stuff. We usually don't keep it out there 24 hours. Usually when it gets to about 3 or 4 in the morning, we'll have somebody bring it in. Sometime, and plus we have to gas it up and keep the generator gassed up and stuff. But I don't think maybe if we did have a crime spree happening, that we've had it out there on multiple days, but that's rare. It's more out there during just a couple shifts and then brought back in or redeployed somewhere else.
Have you kept track of deployments in this year?
Yes, yeah, we started keeping track July 1st on our deployments, just like with all our other military equipment. So that will be in the annual report.
Do you have a ballpark for these last 3 months?
I'd be guessing, but I want to say it's probably been deployed at least, I'd say 3 times a week, 4 times a week.
I am looking at the time and seeing that it's 7:57. Any last thoughts, questions, either on the policy? I know we didn't get to the impact report, or policy, impact report, or just questions about this vehicle and how it's used. Jennifer?
I will admit I have not yet read the impact report. I'm hoping that the impact report will address some of these different ways that that the vehicle is used, and kind of explore those different ways a little bit more.
Yes, same here. And just to confirm, DQ, did you said it's deployed 3 to 4 times a week?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Angela?
I can't remember. I did in the draft of the policy that I was looking at, I didn't see anything around surveillance and it being used as surveillance. Have we talked about that?
That's correct. Let's see. I'm gonna make a note about,
I think we have to also, I mean, so we're saying that's a great question, Angela. I think so if we're saying we're not going to use this for surveillance, right? Maybe that's one of the things on here. What about if, hypothetically, we're driving back and someone calls up saying, hey, I know you're coming back to the police station, right? But can you do me a favor? Instead of coming down on International, can you come by East 12th Street, come by, and then if you can go down East 10th Street, just let me know if you see this car out there, X, Y, and Z. And then we go to see the car. Then we are conducting surveillance because it's a homicide vehicle. So,
Right. I'm not saying we should not say that it should. I'm not implying that we should not say one of its uses is surveillance, but I think we should say it if it is.
oh, I see what you're saying. I see what
Yeah.
you're saying.
So I don't disagree with the fact that it is used for surveillance at all. Like I actually am in support of that to some degree, but I think we might want to mention it now.
That's a good point.
So similarly to the drone, I suppose, it is surveillance. If it's used for surveillance, should be surveillance as connected to an active investigation or warrant, as opposed to sort of general sort of surveillance of the community.
Correct.
Right? Is that the sort of sense where, so we have parity between the policies?
Right. I think we should just probably take the language we use for the drones and put it in here.
I'm making that note, avoiding indiscriminate surveillance, surveillance for active or authorized operations. I know that there's a question in the chat about whether or not deployments will be broken down by area and neighborhood. I hope that that is being tracked and will end up in the annual
Yeah.
reports.
Yes, it will be. It's being tracked.
Okay. Last call. Final thoughts. Probably I'll try to summarize them into an email and send for the benefit of Lieutenant Fleming and Lieutenant Turner. Okay, we are not meeting on Wednesday. We are meeting on Friday, 10 a.m. at the Oakland Coliseum parking lot for a demonstration of the LRAD device. Some of us can make it, some of us cannot. That's okay.
Thanks for setting that up.
That was, yeah, thanks, DQ.
Yeah, thanks for setting that up. Really want to encourage people to look at the link I sent with the, because it's got some really good graphics that will probably support you in thinking about how you want to approach it. It'll, like the cone shape will just make a ton of sense.
And really quick, I will just put that into the chat to record it for posterity. So that everyone gets it. Wait for 2 seconds for people to be able to look at it. Okay, so if we don't see you on Friday, we'll see you next Monday, 6 p.m. for the next, we'll have some edits on the modifications for robots. We'll have some, probably talk about LRAD and maybe have some things for this mobile command vehicle. Thank you all so much.
Thanks, everyone. Good night.
Have a
Thank
good
you.
night.
Night.